hearing room smelled like recycled air and old ambition. Maya Reyes sat alone on one side of a long mahogany table, a microphone she hadn't touched positioned 6 inches from her folded hands. Across from her, arranged like a tribunal that had already reached its verdict, sat 4 senators, 2 DoD representatives, a psychiatrist whose credentials were laminated and visible, and Dr. Richard Holt, who had remembered to wear his best tie. The senators were arguing. Not with her, about her. Present tense, third person, as though she had stepped out to use the restroom and they'd decided to continue without waiting. The complaint is substantiated by 3 independent data reviews. The Army records are sealed. We cannot simply. The question of her mental fitness is separate from the question of the research. Maya wasn't listening to any of them. She was listening to the thing behind the wall to her left, an electrical conduit running at 47 hertz, slightly off its housing. It had been rattling that way since she sat down. It would need to be rebracketed within 18 months or the vibration would crack the drywall. She could have told the building facilities manager. She didn't think this was the moment. She reached into her left breast pocket, felt the familiar shape of the foam earplugs she had carried since basic training. Didn't take them out. She'd been offered earplugs 4 times since entering the Russell Senate office building that morning. The security guard at the magnetometer, who assumed the ambient noise of the atrium was loud. The subcommittee staffer who handed her a packet of procedural documents. A well-meaning senator's aide who noticed her pause near the hallway HVAC unit. And now Dr. Holt's attorney, who had slid a fresh pair across the table before the session opened, in a gesture Maya suspected was intended to be condescending and had landed for him perfectly. She had declined all 4 times. Nobody understood why. Nobody in this room understood much about her at all. That was about to change. Watertown, New York was not a city that announced itself. It existed in that particular upstate register, post-industrial, lake-effect battered, proud in the specific way of places that have survived things nobody made a movie about. Fort Drum sat at its edge like a permanent reminder that the town's real industry had always been service. Half the faculty at Jefferson Community College had a veteran in the family. The other half were veterans themselves. Maya had arrived 3 years ago with a research appointment at the State University Satellite Campus, 2 duffel bags, and a noise complaint already forming in the back of her jaw from the fluorescent lights in her new office. She taught 2 courses, Acoustic Engineering Fundamentals, Environmental Sound Analysis. Both were listed as electives and both were, inexplicably, always full. Her students liked her because she never used a microphone and never raised her voice and could still be heard clearly from the back row. They assumed good projection. It wasn't projection. Her colleagues thought she was antisocial. She skipped the Friday department gatherings at the bar on Court Street, not because she disliked her colleagues, but because the combination of the bar's sound system, the street traffic on the corner, and the particular resonance frequency of the exposed brick interior gave her a headache that lasted until Sunday. She had tried to explain this once to a junior lecturer named Paul, who was the closest thing she had to a work friend. He had nodded the way people nod when they are deciding whether to recommend therapy. She kept her office door closed. She ate lunch outside, in a specific courtyard corner where 4 buildings created a natural acoustic shadow, and the ambient noise dropped to something manageable. She had been flagged at MEPS for abnormal auditory processing. They'd almost not let her in. Then they'd learned what she could do with it. She carried that knowledge the same way she carried the earplugs, in her left breast pocket, unopened, present but not on display. The fire drill alarm on a Thursday in October was routine. Maya was mid-sentence in her 11 o'clock lecture, explaining the relationship between wave frequency and material resonance, when the alarm cut through the building and her students began the practiced choreography of mild inconvenience. Phones pocketed, jackets grabbed, exiting in the shuffling, unbothered way of people who know the drill is a drill. Maya followed them out. She was crossing the parking lot toward the designated assembly area when she stopped. The maintenance worker 40 feet ahead of her was moving toward the east mechanical room with a valve wrench, keys already out, the kind of purposeful stride of someone executing a checklist item, shutting down the gas supply to the building before the all-clear, standard protocol. Maya said loudly and without preface, "Don't open that valve." The worker stopped, turned, looked at her the way people look at strangers who give instructions from 40 feet away. "Excuse me." The pressure in that line. She was already walking toward him. "It's wrong. There's a resonance in the feed pipe that wasn't there on Tuesday. Something's partially occluded between the main and the secondary shutoff." He stared at her. She stopped 3 feet from him. "If you open that valve with a blockage and a pressure differential that size, the line ruptures. Best case, you're looking at a gas pocket in the east wing mechanical space. Worst case," she didn't finish that sentence. She didn't need to. He did not open the valve. He called the building's chief engineer instead, a methodical man named Gordon who arrived with a pressure gauge and a look of professional skepticism, and checked the line with the deliberate efficiency of someone who expected to find nothing. He found something. A partial blockage between the main and secondary shutoffs, consistent with sediment displacement. The pressure differential on his gauge matched what it would need to be to cause a rupture if the secondary valve was manually opened. Gordon looked at the gauge for a moment. Then he looked at Maya. "How did you?" "The pipe resonance shifted," Maya said. "It was audible." Gordon looked at the pipe, then back at her. The pipe was insulated, bracketed to a concrete wall, and currently making no sound that any person present could detect. "Audible," he repeated. "Yes," Maya said. She went back to her office to finish her lecture notes. Gordon told the story at the faculty senate meeting that week because he was a methodical man who logged anomalies. Dr. Richard Holt heard it, and he started paying a different kind of attention. Holt ran the department the way certain men run departments, with the absolute authority of someone who has never been told no by an institution, and therefore assumes institutions structurally agree with him. He was not unintelligent. He had published. He had grant money. He had the particular social fluency of academia, which meant he could be charming in a way that functioned as pressure. He came to her office 3 days after the gas line incident. "The DUD conference in December," he said, settling into her single visitor chair without being invited. "Passive acoustic detection applications. I've been asked to present the joint research." "You've been asked," Maya said without looking up from her monitor. "We've been asked, but I think it would be stronger coming from both of us. Your methodology section especially." A pause. "The gas line thing is going to follow you around this campus, Maya. You might as well get ahead of it, put it in a professional context." She knew he was right about one thing. The story was already mutating in the retelling. The version Paul had heard involved her pressing her ear to the pipe like a safecracker. The version the department administrator had heard involved some kind of handheld device she hadn't declared. A conference presentation would give her methodology a formal frame. 2 days, she said. "I'll need to review what you're submitting." "Of course," Holt said, already standing. He left her office. She looked at the door for a moment after it closed. The gap at the bottom of the door was letting in the 60 Hz hum from the corridor lighting. She got back to work. The DUD conference was held at a hotel in Albany with aggressively neutral carpeting and a ballroom that had been subdivided by portable acoustic panels into 3 simultaneous presentation spaces, which was, for Maya, its own specific kind of suffering. The panel bleed-through alone, was making her right temple throb. Holt presented. She sat beside him, available for questions on methodology. The room was attentive. DoD-funded conferences attracted a specific audience, people who knew enough to hear what was being implied beneath the formal language of grant-funded research. Passive acoustic detection without active signal emission. The applications were obvious to everyone in the room, and nobody said them out loud. The trouble started during the Q&A. A defense contractor named Marcus Webb, who had the particular energy of someone who had flown in from somewhere more important and was letting the room know, leaned forward from the third row. "The detection sensitivity you're claiming," Webb said, "exceeds current MEMS microphone arrays by a factor that I'm going to need demonstrated before I'm comfortable recommending this for any procurement conversation." Holt started to answer. Webb cut him off pleasantly. "I'd like Dr. Reyes to demonstrate." A DoD representative on the organizing committee, a woman named Colonel Stanwyck, who had been sitting in the back with the still, evaluating quality of someone paid to notice things, stood up without being asked and said she could arrange a controlled demonstration in 15 minutes. They moved to a smaller room. Holt was smiling the entire time, the kind of smile that Maya would later understand was made of calculation. They positioned her facing a soundproof partition. Behind it, Colonel Stanwyck and 2 technicians, Webb and Holt and 6 other attendees watching from the side. "We'll activate 3 sound sources behind the partition," Colonel Stanwyck said through an intercom. "Identify them." Maya stood still. She listened. One is a mechanical relay cycling at approximately 4 Hz. One is a fluid movement, water or a water-based coolant in a narrow pipe, maybe 12 millimeter interior diameter. And one, she paused, one is a person, standing in the back left corner, breathing at a rate that suggests they've been running recently. Silence from behind the partition. Colonel Stanwyck's voice came back, controlled but not entirely. "That's correct." The room behind Maya went very quiet. Webb was no longer smiling the way he had been when he arrived. He was smiling differently now. The way people smile when they've accidentally found exactly what they were looking for and need a moment to understand what that means. Holt was also smiling. Maya didn't like either smile, but they were not the same smile, and it would take her 6 more weeks to understand the difference. The formal complaint arrived on a Tuesday morning, copied to the university provost, the DoD Research Integrity Board, and the chair of the Joint Research Grant. Holt had been thorough. The complaint ran to 11 pages. It was organized, well-cited, and written in the precise tone of someone who had drafted it before the conference and was waiting for the right moment to file it. The core allegation: Maya Reyes had falsified experimental results in their joint passive acoustic detection research. The demonstration at the Albany conference was not a display of human perceptual ability. It was, Holt argued with supporting technical appendices, a staged performance using a concealed induction device, a bone conduction receiver that could pick up signals transmitted from a Confederate behind the partition. There was no Confederate. There was no device. Holt knew this. The revised version of their joint research paper, resubmitted to the DoD Grant Board that same Tuesday with his name as sole author, did not know this. Or rather, it had been carefully edited not to know this. Maya read the complaint twice. Then she sat in her office for a long time, listening to the familiar 60 Hz hum from the corridor. She could call the Army. She knew the number, but calling the number meant saying the words, and saying the words meant violating the NDA attached to Project Lasso, which covered not just the program's findings but its existence. And she had signed that agreement with full comprehension of what it meant, and it had not occurred to her until this moment that the classification designed to protect her capability would be the thing used to bury her. She put the complaint face down on her desk. She picked up the unopened earplugs from her breast pocket, held them for a moment, put them back. Old habit, the physical equivalent of taking a breath. Phase 7, the pylon. The science journalist was named Trevor Marsh, and he wrote for a publication that positioned itself at the intersection of defense technology and public accountability, which in practice meant he wrote about fraud. His piece ran under the headline, "Do Defunded Researcher Claims Superhuman Hearing. Investigation Suggests Otherwise." It was careful enough to avoid defamation. It was careless enough to include a quote from an audiologist who had not examined Maya, but was willing to say that the claimed detection range was not consistent with documented human auditory physiology. It included a photograph of Maya taken from the university faculty page in which she happened to be looking slightly to the left of the camera, which reads, in the grammar of internet comment sections, as evasiveness. The comment sections were efficient about the rest. Her university email began receiving messages the morning the piece published. She stopped opening them by noon. By evening, her Rate My Professor page had been updated by people who had never taken her class. By the following morning, the university had placed her on administrative leave pending the outcome of the DoD investigation. Her keycard no longer worked on the lab door, and someone had mailed her a box of earplugs. The note inside said, "Maybe these will help you hear reality." She set the box on her kitchen table. She looked at it for a moment. She didn't open it. She had her own. She went for a walk instead, outside in the November cold, to a park 3 blocks from her apartment where the ambient noise was clean and simple. Wind, bare branches, distant traffic with no wall to bounce off. She stood there for a while. She had survived things this was not. She walked home. Phase 8, the impossible silence. Project Lasso had not been given a name that meant anything. The Army didn't name black budget programs for poetry. Lasso was an acronym for something administrative that Maya had been told once and not retained, because it didn't matter. What mattered was the program's function. Identify soldiers with extreme low-frequency auditory sensitivity, a physiological anomaly present in roughly 1 in 40,000 people, and train them in signals intelligence applications that no electronic equipment could reliably replicate. Low-frequency sound travels through walls, through earth, through water. Standard surveillance equipment filters it as noise. Lasso operatives didn't filter it. They read it. Maya had been recruited in her 2nd year of service, when a signals officer named Captain Dara Osai had noticed during a routine assessment that Maya was consistently reporting equipment interference, that the instruments themselves weren't logging. She wasn't reporting interference. She was hearing through the equipment to the source signals beneath. It took Osai 6 months to convince the program's oversight committee that this was real. It took Maya 3 months in the Lasso training pipeline to become the most effective passive signals collector the program had ever documented. She'd done 8 deployments, all classified, all undercover designations that described her as a communications technician, which she also was, because the best cover is one that's mostly true. She couldn't say any of this. The NDA covered the program, the methodology, the deployments, and in a clause that had seemed bureaucratic and abstract when she'd signed it, any claims of capability derived from participation in the program. That clause was the one currently being used against her. She sat in her kitchen the night after the administrative leave notice arrived and thought about Senior Chief Reynolds. No, that was someone else's story. She thought about Osai. She thought about a basement in Mosul where she'd spent 11 hours on a concrete floor listening to the building above her and feeding targeting data through a handset to a team she never saw, because the equipment in that building was being actively jammed and she wasn't. She thought about the earplugs she'd been offered 4 times that day. She thought about the ones in her breast pocket that she'd been carrying for 11 years. She picked up her phone. She dialed Osai's number. It rang twice. "I was wondering when you'd call," Osai said. Phase 9, the ultimatum. The university's legal counsel was a careful woman named Margaret Park, who delivered bad news with the particular gentleness of someone who has delivered it many times and found that gentleness was efficient. She laid out the options across a conference table on a Friday morning. Option 1. Maya resigned her position voluntarily, issued a statement acknowledging that her research demonstration had created misleading impressions, forfeited her authorship credit on the joint research, and left Waterton. The DoD investigation would be closed as resolved. Her name would not appear in the misconduct database. She would be allowed to list the university appointment on her CV. Option 2. The matter proceeded to a Senate subcommittee review of DoD-funded research integrity, which was being fast-tracked at the request of 2 senators on the Armed Services Committee who had seen the Trevor Marsh article and wanted to demonstrate oversight. This would be public. It would involve her full academic and service record. It would take 4 months and leave a paper trail regardless of outcome. Margaret Park paused after presenting option 2 with the careful silence of someone, allowing a conclusion to be reached without being said aloud. "I'll need 48 hours, Maya said. "Of course," Margaret said. Maya drove home. She called Osai. Osai had spent 2 days since Maya's first call making contact with a defense intelligence agency audiologist named Dr. Patricia Wren, who had been attempting to locate Maya through official channels for 3 years, ever since the DIA had tried to access Project Lasso's findings for a new program and discovered the documentation was incomplete. Wren needed Maya's formal participation to fill the gaps in the archive. She had been hitting classified walls for 36 months. Osai had also spent those 2 days filing a formal request to declassify the portions of Maya's service, record relevant to her auditory capability. "It's been approved," Osai said. "Partial declassification. Wren has the summary, it's enough." "Will she testify?" "She'll do better than testify." Maya sat with that for a moment. Option 2, she told Margaret Park the next morning. Phase 10, the tribunal. The Russell Senate office building was built to make individuals feel the weight of institutional scale, and it was good at its job. The subcommittee hearing room had the high ceilings and wood paneling of a place designed for consequence. It held, on this particular morning, approximately 40 people, most of whom were there because Holt's attorney had done good work framing this as a significant case of federally funded research misconduct, which attracted the kind of attention that certain careers are built on. Holt sat at the right side of the long table, his attorney beside him, his slides loaded on a laptop ready. He had brought a data visualization consultant, a young man whose entire job that morning was to make bar charts look authoritative, and a letter from a psychiatrist who specialized in what the letter called auditory hyperesthesia syndrome and associated delusional patterns. The letter was 3 pages. It used the word delusion 4 times. Maya sat at the left side of the table. No attorney, no slides, no consultant. She had her unopened earplugs in her breast pocket and a legal pad with 6 lines of handwritten notes she had not looked at since the car. Senator Claire Adler, the subcommittee chair, opened the session with the brisk efficiency of someone running the 4th meeting of the morning. She had not read the Trevor Marsh article. She had read the DoD complaint summary and formed no visible opinion. Holt's attorney presented first. 32 minutes. The bar charts were indeed authoritative. The statistical analysis of Maya's claimed detection results that exceeded documented human auditory range by measurable margins, was presented as self-evidently impossible. The contractor demonstration at Albany was reframed as a performance. The psychiatrist's letter was entered into the record. "Dr. Reyes," Senator Adler said, "you have the floor." Maya leaned toward the microphone. "I didn't fabricate the data," she said. "I don't have slides. I'd like to request permission for 2 witnesses to enter the record." Holt's attorney was on his feet immediately. The witnesses hadn't been listed in the pre-hearing submissions. Senator Adler looked at the procedural staffer beside her, who checked something on a tablet, and then did the thing that bureaucracies occasionally do when they sense they are about to become footnotes. She allowed it. The doors at the back of the room opened. Phase 11, the cavalry. Dara Oz walked in the way she had always walked into rooms, straight spine, no performance. The specific economy of movement of someone who had spent years in spaces where surplus motion attracted attention. She was wearing civilian clothes, and she was carrying a folder with a red border. Beside her, Dr. Patricia Wren. Compact 50s, the kind of person whose glasses and cardigan read as academic, until you noticed the DIA credentials clipped to her jacket pocket and revised the read entirely. They walked to the front of the room. Holt watched them the way people watch something they can't immediately categorize. His attorney leaned toward him and said something quietly. Holt shook his head slightly. He did not know who these women were. This was, for him, the beginning of the problem. Osai placed the red-bordered folder on the table in front of Senator Adler. Sergeant First Class Dara Osai, retired. Former Signals Intelligence Handler, United States Army. I'm requesting entry of a partially declassified DIA summary into the record, per authorization received at 800 this morning. She slid a second document across. The authorization had a stamp on it that made the DoD representative on the far end of the table sit up slightly. Dr. Wren set up a small device on the table. It looked like a sophisticated audio interface, multiple frequency outputs, a digital readout, a signal generator about the size of a hardcover book. Dr. Patricia Wren, Defense Intelligence Agency, Acoustic Research Division. I've been looking for Dr. Reyes for 3 years. She said this without inflection, the way you state a fact that is its own argument. I'd like to demonstrate why. Senator Adler looked at the DIA credentials, looked at the authorization stamp, looked at Holt's attorney, who was now doing the legal equivalent of reassessing the structural integrity of the floor. Proceed, Senator Adler said. Phase 12, the vindication. Dr. Wren didn't argue with the data. She was a scientist. Scientists, the good ones, understand that the cleanest rebuttal is a demonstration. She positioned a portable acoustic partition. She'd had it brought in, assembled now by a DIA technician who had been waiting in the hallway across the center of the room, perpendicular to the table. It was a standard soundproof divider, the kind used in audiology testing, roughly 8 feet tall. I'll stand behind this partition, Dr. Wren said to the room. I'll activate frequency sources in a sequence of my choosing. Dr. Reyes will identify them in order, without looking at my equipment, without any prior knowledge of the sequence. I'll be operating the generator manually. There is no signal she could intercept through any conceivable transmission method that would give her this information. This is a closed demonstration. Holt's attorney, I object to the relevance of. Senator Adler noted proceed. Dr. Wren moved behind the partition. Maya sat still. The first tone came. Below the threshold of anything the other people in the room could detect, Maya saw it on their faces, the slight attention they paid to the air, hearing nothing, concluding nothing was there. 18 hertz, Maya said. Sine wave. Clean generation, so this is equipment and not a structural source. A pause from behind the partition. The second tone. Approximately 31 hertz. There's a slight harmonic at 62, which means the generator has a minor resonance issue in the output housing, probably a loose panel screw. A longer pause. The third tone, then the fourth, then 2 simultaneously, then 3. Maya called them in sequence with enough technical specificity that the DoD representative had stopped looking at his phone. Then Dr. Wren went off script. She didn't activate the generator. She stood behind the partition and breathed. 12 seconds of silence that was not silence. "You're behind the left side of the partition," Maya said. "You've shifted your weight to your right foot. You had coffee this morning, but not recently, maybe 3 hours ago." A pause. "And the partition's left mounting bracket is going to need to be replaced. The vibration damping is degraded. I'd give it another 8 months before it affects test integrity." Complete silence in the room. Dr. Wren came around the partition. She looked at Maya the way scientists look at things they've been trying to find for a long time. 11 frequency identifications, Dr. Wren said to the subcommittee, including 2 below 20 Hz, below the documented threshold of standard audiometric equipment. Correct on every identification, with secondary observations that indicate perception of acoustic detail at a resolution I have not documented in any previous subject. She opened the red-bordered folder. Project Lasso identified 12 individuals over 9 years with this capability. Dr. Reyes is the most sensitive subject the program ever assessed. Her service record, now partially declassified, documents 8 deployments in which this capability was operationally employed. The reason her results look statistically impossible is because they were measured against the wrong population. She wasn't being compared to equipment. She was being compared to people. She closed the folder. She should have been compared to equipment. She wins that comparison too. Senator Adler looked at the psychiatrist's letter that had been entered into the record. She looked at it for a moment. Then she turned to the staffer beside her and said something quietly. The staffer removed the letter from the official record. Phase 13, the collapse. Holt asked to be recognized. He raised his hand like a student, which was not how this worked, and the gesture made him look, in an instant, like someone who had forgotten where he was in the social architecture of this particular room. Senator Adler did not recognize him. His attorney leaned close. They exchanged words. The attorney's body language underwent a visible reorganization, the kind of postural shift that happens when legal counsel recalculates the exposure in a case and finds a different number than they started with. The DoD representative at the far end of the table, a man named Garrett who had attended this hearing as a formality, who had expected to watch a misconduct finding get formalized and then have lunch, quietly slid his chair 3 inches away from Holt's side of the table. Just 3 inches. He didn't look at Holt when he did it. He looked at his phone. But 3 inches in a room like that one, in a moment like that one, is a declaration. Holt saw it. He had spent 11 pages explaining how Maya Reyes had fabricated results that exceeded human physiological limits. He had entered a psychiatric letter into a Senate record. He had resubmitted their joint research under his name alone. He had done all of this with the absolute confidence of someone who had never been told no by an institution. The institution had just told him no. He straightened his tie. He looked at the bar charts on his laptop screen. He didn't say anything else. The data visualization consultant, the young man with the authoritative bar charts, quietly began packing his laptop bag, which was as good a barometer of the room's direction as any official statement. Phase 14, the quiet close. Maya's record was formally restored by end of business that day. The research attribution was corrected by the DoD grant board the following morning. The journal that had published the Marsh article ran a correction at the bottom of the original piece, in font 3 sizes smaller than the headline, as journals do. She didn't gloat about that either. She didn't shake hands on the way out of the hearing room. She nodded to Senator Adler, who nodded back with the particular expression of someone filing a memory for future use. She walked past Holt's chair without looking at it. She shook Dr. Wren's hand briefly, agreed to a formal DIA documentation session the following month, and walked out into the marble hallway of the Russell building. Osai was waiting. 11 years since they'd shared a concrete floor in the dark, feeding numbers through a handset that nobody official would ever acknowledge. Osai looked exactly as she always had: straight spine, no performance, the kind of face that had learned economy. She held something out. A pair of standard issue foam earplugs, sealed in their original plastic wrap. Old joke. They'd had it since the Lasso pipeline, when the program's training cadre had spent 3 weeks trying to find protective gear that worked for Maya's specific auditory profile, and landed, finally, on the answer that nothing worked better than standard foam. Not because it protected her, but because it gave her something to hold while she worked. She'd never worn them, not once. She'd carried them because Osai had given them to her the first day of training with the words, "For when you need to pretend you're like everyone else." Maya looked at the earplugs. She declined. Same as always. Osai put them back in her pocket and she was already almost smiling. "Senate subcommittee," Osai said. "That's new." "The bar was higher," Maya said. They walked out through the building's main entrance into the cold November air of Washington, D.C. Traffic, helicopters, construction 3 blocks east, a man arguing on a phone near the fountain, the specific acoustic signature of the Capitol building's HVAC system running at slightly above rated capacity. Maya heard all of it. She always had. She put her hand in her left breast pocket and felt the earplugs she'd carried since basic training, sealed, foam, standard issue, never opened, and she walked forward into the noise of the city. She didn't need quiet. She never had. The world had just taken 11 years to figure out that this wasn't a problem.